What's up, guys? And tonight we're going to be throwing this catch can on my Dodge Ram 1500. We're going to be going over what the PCV system does, why you might want or need a catch can, the whole debate online of whether it's necessary or even harmful, and how to throw it on. Alright, so let's start with the basics. What is an oil catch can and what does it do? So basically, what it does is you have your PCV line coming in one way, and a lot of the time, I'll explain what the PCV system does in a second, but a lot of the time that PCV system will carry harmful vapors, if you have enough blow-by, exhaust fumes, and oil mist through into your intake, and which can pile up in the intake, gum things up. And if you have a direct injection motor, which this is not but if you do, it will actually start to gum up on the intake valves. And basically you don't want oil in your combustion chamber. This is not a two-stroke. That is not something that should be happening. So a lot of people will install these. It'll condense the mist on this plate right here and then filter out everything else, leaving all of the oil to fall down into the bottom to be drained out later. So your PCV system has to do with your crankcase pressure. Now, due to blow-by, which is gases and more or less your compression sneaking past the pistons and piston rings, as well as just the fact that there's so much stuff moving around in there, you don't want to have positive pressure, you want to have negative pressure. If you have positive pressure, it can suddenly spike, it can make it run like crap. You can have more blow by the opposite way, you have oil coming up through your pistons, and it just generally makes it run like crap, leak oil, blow seals. So what they did was they have, you can't see it right here, but it goes onto the valve cover on most cases. They have a line that just goes right around into the intake where you have vacuum. So when you're running it, it has vacuum. It's just sucking the air in from this side where I have an aftermarket filter through the block and then into the intake, which then goes into the pistons and everything. So the problem with this a lot of times is even if you do have a properly functioning PCV valve and all of that, there can still be oil that piles up in there. So you can see barely. I'll try and get a better view in a sec. But just to test my theory, I ended up putting a little fuel filter on here just to see what oil it would catch, and it actually kind of filled up quick. And the reason I had started looking into this was I had already replaced my plenum, which is a issue on these motors, and it was still filling up with oil and causing it to misfire and just run like crap in general. So I went the route a lot of other people decided to, and just get rid of that oil consumption at all and just have it, stay in its own spot, not going to the intake, and only have nice clean air going into the intake. Now, of course, with everything, there's a huge debate on the internet and between mechanics on whether these are necessary or completely waste of money, even harmful, some people say. And to me, I think it really depends on what motor you have. A lot of these smaller motors might not have as big of an issue with stuff like this, especially if you keep it going well. But when you have an older model, especially with 6 to 8 cylinders that has a couple 100,000 miles on it, you have more blow-by and you want to keep that out. So personally, I am on the side of a catch can, even though it might be a few bucks wasted. It's nice to have the peace of mind, and a lot of the time it will end up helping a lot. So with all the background information out of the way, let's get started. I'm going to start by removing the cold air intake just so I can give you all a better view of what I'm doing. And yes, this is actually a cold air intake because it pokes right out the front. And if you have one of the ones that's just a box, it's not cold air, I swear. It's not cold air. It's still sucking air from the engine bay, which is warm. This is a cold air. Anyway, done with my rant. Let's pull that off. Yoink. So there's the PCV valve itself, which is more or less just a check valve. And then you can see the bit of oil that's sitting in the bottom there, and that's only from about a day or two of running. Anyways, I'm going to start trying to mock up where I'm going to have this thing at. I got this kit from O'Reilly's for relatively cheap compared to most of the other ones. Still relatively expensive, but I'm pretty happy with the build quality.
So it gives you hose clamps, and your actual catch can, as well as some directions and an extra mount. So Dorman makes good parts, but they're not super flashy in terms of the other performance brand, but they really outdid themselves on this one. It's nice black anodized. Bring it over here. You've got the grip on the bottom, so you can take it apart, clean it out. There's your oil drain. And then you have your out and your in. So I would have to mount it this way. I'd have to switch it around. But I'm going to figure out where I can mount it. A lot of people will literally just mount it off to the side here, which I've been debating doing, but that's a lot of extra hose. I might cut this up, move it over here, but we're going to figure that out. So I'm going to start mocking this bad boy up, and I will get back with y'all when I have a decision. Alright, so update. I've been screwing around with things for a while. First I wanted to put it there, then I wanted to put it there, then there. But I realized, especially with the amount of hose I have and the amount of space that I actually want it to be close to the PCV and the intake on the intake, I moved it over there. So we're going to be mocking some stuff up. I switched the grommets and the valve from that side over to this side. Doesn't make a difference what side it's on. So hopefully I'll just be able to run a line from there up to there where it's mounted, and then right back down in the intake. You know, save some space, save some time, not have hoses running everywhere. So I ended up getting it mocked up a little better. Here's a better view. So on the original motor, when I got this thing stock, both the PCV and the PCV nipple down on the intake were both on this side. Now, at one point, I did end up swapping out this intake for one off of a 5.9, the one that you'll see in my rebuild videos. And for whatever reason, they changed the design, so everything ended up on this side. I ran a line from that side all the way around to this side, which, you know, was relatively convenient. I just tucked it up under everything. But in terms of this, you really want to use the minimal amount of hose as you can, just so that, you know, the less hose, the less possibility for it compressing itself under vacuum and you lose vacuum. Switched everything over, ran this line in the back to the intake side, made sure nothing was kinked, and then ran the outside into the intake. So far it's looking good. I'm going to tighten everything up. But the one thing you're going to want to make sure to do, especially on these where they have the bottom exit for the drainage, you want to be able to make sure you have at least a bit of room to stick some up under there when you're draining it, just so you don't have to remove the entire thing, dump everything out. Typically, most people say that when you do your oil change after about 3,000 to 5,000 miles, depending on how often you do it, you should drain that as well. But I'm going to be checking up on it a little bit more just to see how much it's catching. I think I'm going to spend about 2 days driving it for this video and see how much it's caught. I think it's going to be a bunch, but all I did was I went into where the ground cable went into the firewall and just slapped the mount up in there and put it all back in. So it hides behind the little shroud that goes right here to keep water out. Sits perfectly in there, not too out of the way. And yeah, about the most convenient I could make it. So the installation is done. Really straightforward. You're just going to want to throw some hose clamps on all those ends. I'll show you what it looks like in a sec. But for now, we're going to be looking at how much oil it catches over the next few days, and I'll get back to y'all. I'm going to throw this little guard piece back on, throw the air intake back on, and we'll be good. That might have not been the best jump cut, but you knew what I was trying to do. We got it figured out. Got the new catch can in. So I will report back to you guys after a few days and see how much oil it's caught. I'm going to assume a good amount just because of the amount of crap that was caught up in that little temporary filter I had. Alright, so I've got it all loosened up. Just going to put this little cup under here and see how much oil. This is after about a week of driving with about a 6-month-old PCV valve. So let's see. Just let that drain out.
Alright, so after only a week, it's managed to catch a decent amount of oil. I'm pretty happy with that. That would have been all coated inside my air intake, so obviously it's doing a pretty good job of catching stuff and making sure it doesn't get consumed and spread all over your intake. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this product. I picked it up for, oh god damn it, I picked it up for pretty cheap. So yeah, I'd say they're worth it. My personal opinion on catch cans, I'd say just spend the 40, 50, 60 bucks and save cleaning out your intake once a year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.